The pawnshop reeked of desperation and stale cigarettes. Serena pressed herself against the grimy counter, her 27-year-old frame gaunt and trembling as Big Tony's meaty fist connected with her ribs. Pain exploded through her torso, driving the air from her lungs, awakening the old fractures that had never healed properly. "Thought you could pawn stolen goods in my shop. Street trash," Tony snarled, grabbing a fistful of her matted hair, his fingers brushing against the burn scar that snaked down her left arm. "I know what you did. The whole damn underworld is looking for you." Serena's vision blurred with tears. Through the shop's window, she could see them. Dozens of black SUVs lined up like steel coffins, their tinted windows gleaming under the streetlights. Men in tailored black suits moved through the streets with mechanical precision, showing a sketch to every passerby. "Her sketch, please," Serena whispered, tasting copper in her mouth, her voice barely a rasp after years of screaming that no one heard. "I did not do anything wrong." Tony yanked her closer, his breath hot and rancid against her face. "The Castellano family wants you found, sweetheart. Dead or alive, nobody specified, but I figure why let them have all the fun? Maybe I will collect that bounty myself, have a little entertainment first." The pawnshop door exploded inward, the sound of shattering glass mixed with the thunderous slam of car doors and the click of dozens of guns being drawn. Tony's grip went slack as his face drained of color. Standing in the doorway, backlit by headlights and framed by shadows that seemed to bow before him, was a man built like a god of war, 6'4" of pure muscle wrapped in a perfectly tailored black suit that cost more than the entire shop. A faded scar ran from his temple to his jaw, a reminder that even kings bleed. But it was his eyes that made hardened criminals beg for mercy, gray and cold as winter steel, empty of everything except lethal intent. Victor Castellano, the Viper himself, the most powerful and ruthless Mafia boss on the eastern seaboard, the man who had buried 3 rival families and never lost a night of sleep. His gaze swept the room and locked onto the woman cowering behind the counter, the woman with haunted eyes and trembling hands, the woman who had saved his daughter from drowning 3 days ago, while the whole city thought she was a threat. "Found her," he said into his phone, his voice a low rumble that seemed to make the walls vibrate. Serena's world went black as her legs gave out, certain that these were the last seconds of her miserable life. She had no way of knowing that the most dangerous man in the city had not come to kill her. He had come to save her. But what happens when the Viper discovers the scars hidden beneath her skin and the monsters still hunting her from the past? Like and subscribe if you want to witness how a man who knows no mercy learns to protect the one woman who expected nothing but death from him. Share this story with someone who believes that even in the darkest shadows, salvation can wear the most terrifying face. 3 days earlier, the morning sunlight struggled to pierce the gray mist that blanketed the abandoned industrial district. Serena woke inside her old battered car beneath the overpass. Her body was curled on the torn back seat. A thin blanket failed to shield her from the biting cold of dawn. Beside her, Shadow whimpered softly. The old dog, blind in one eye, pressed himself against her hip for warmth. His once silver-gray fur was dirty and matted, yet still loyal after nearly 2 years of wandering the streets with her. "Not much, my friend," Serena whispered, her voice hoarse with thirst, as her trembling hand opened the plastic bag holding half a loaf of bread salvaged from the bakery dumpster the night before. "But it is better than nothing." She broke the hard, dry bread in half and gave one piece to Shadow, watching him chew slowly with teeth that were almost all gone. The animal did not care that her clothes hung loose on her emaciated frame taken from the church donation bin, or that her ribs showed beneath the thin shirt, or that the soles of her shoes had long since worn through. Shadow only knew to stay with her, and that was the only love Serena had left after so many years of hell. Life on the streets had taught her how to become invisible. At the age of 27, she had mastered the art of dissolving into shadow, moving through crowds like a ghost no one noticed. The system had chewed her up and spit her out when she was 12. From one foster home to another, from one institution to the next, from a drunk foster father to an indifferent foster mother, and then to Derek, the man she thought was her escape, who turned out to be the door straight into hell. She had learned that trust was a luxury she could not afford. "Come on, Shadow." Serena sat up and stroked the old dog's head. "Let's see if there are any cans by the river today." The path along the canal was one of her familiar routes. The water rushed fast after recent rains, dark and violent between concrete embankments. Most people avoided the place. Too dangerous, too filthy, perfect for a woman who did not want to be seen. Serena pulled her hood lower, hiding her greasy hair and hollow, sleepless eyes. The burn scar on her left arm throbbed in the cold, reminding her of the night Derek set the apartment on fire with her still inside. She touched the wedding ring still on her finger, the only thing of value she had left, kept not for memory but as her last emergency exit when everything became unbearable. One day she would have to sell it, but not today. Today she still had half a loaf of bread and an old dog who needed her. Today she was still alive. And for Serena, being alive was enough. The scar on her arm reminded Serena of everything she had tried to bury. 9 years earlier, she had been only 18 when she met Derek Hayes in a cheap bar. He was handsome, smooth-tongued, promising to take her away from the lonely life the foster care system had just released her from because she was too old to stay. She had been naive enough to believe she had finally found someone who loved her. They married after only 3 months. On their wedding night, Derek hit her for the first time because she did not pour his beer fast enough. From then on, the beatings became routine. He hit her when he was drunk. He hit her when he was sober. He hit her when he lost at gambling. He hit her when she cried and even when she did not. Serena learned how to stay silent and endure. She learned how to hide bruises. She learned how to lie and say she had slipped on the stairs. When she was 22, she discovered she was pregnant. In that moment, she felt hope. Maybe a child would change Derek. Maybe he would become a good father. But when she told him, he kicked her in the stomach until blood soaked the floor. The baby never had a chance to be born and went away carrying with it the last fragment of humanity still left in Serena's heart. When she was 23, Derek lost an enormous gambling debt. He sold her to a human trafficking ring to pay it off as if she were nothing more than an object that could be traded. Serena was locked in a dark, damp basement for 2 years. 2 years without seeing sunlight. 2 years being treated like an animal. 2 years screaming with no one hearing. She did not want to remember what happened in that basement. The strange men's faces. The nights of terror. The moments she wanted to die just to end it. Those memories were a black abyss she refused to look into. When she was 25, the police raided the house. Serena was rescued with 13 other women, all of them walking skeletons with empty eyes, but freedom did not come easily. Derek told the police she was a willing prostitute who had run away with other men and that he was the victim of a corrupt wife. No one believed her. No one ever believed her. Derek was released after a few months in custody, and the first thing he did was swear he would find and kill Serena for humiliating him. She fled to another city, rented a cheap, small apartment, and worked in a laundromat hoping to start a new life. But Derek found her. He always found her. That night, Serena woke to the smell of smoke. Fire had spread through the apartment, and the door was locked from the outside. She had to jump from the second-floor window, but before she escaped, the flames licked her left arm. She still remembered the stench of burning flesh. She still remembered Derek's laughter rising from the street below. She still remembered the pain tearing through her skin as if someone were peeling away her flesh layer by layer. The burn left a permanent scar, a strip of wrinkled skin running from her elbow to her wrist. She lost all her documents in the fire. She lost all her money. She lost everything except the wedding ring on her finger and the will to survive that refused to break. From then on, she became a ghost on the streets. A woman with no identity, no past and no future. Shadow found her on the first rainy night she slept outside. The old dog abandoned and as lonely as she was. 2 lost souls found each other and never parted again. Serena pushed the dark memories aside as she and Shadow followed the narrow path along the canal. The past was something she could not change, but the present still required her to keep living. She bent down to rummage through the trash by the roadside, found 2 dented aluminum cans and slipped them into her worn cloth bag. Each can was worth only a few cents, but a few cents added together were enough to buy a loaf of bread for her and Shadow for the day. The canal was running faster than usual today, the water thick and churning like an angry creature. The heavy rains the week before had turned what was once a gentle stream into something dangerously lethal. Serena stayed away from the edge, survival instinct always alive in her after so many years among danger. Shadow trailed behind her, the old dog walking slowly, his remaining eye scanning the surroundings with caution. She was about to turn into her familiar alley when she heard it. A scream, high-pitched, filled with terror, and suddenly cut off by the sound of splashing water. Serena's head snapped around. About 50 meters downstream, a small body was struggling in the violent current. A little girl with golden hair and a white dress was being carried away like a fragile leaf. A pink balloon drifted beside her, innocent as a cruel mockery. Even from that distance, Serena could see the child's eyes wide with panic, her tiny hands flailing desperately at the surface before a wave pushed her under again. Every survival instinct in Serena screamed at her to run. Getting involved meant attention. Attention meant trouble. Trouble meant being found. Derek was still out there, still hunting her. The police could still ask for papers she did not have. Anyone could be an enemy. She had survived a year on the streets by avoiding people, by caring about nothing except herself and Shadow. This was not her problem. The girl had parents, had a family, had someone who would come to save her. The girl's head broke the surface again, her mouth opening for air but swallowing only muddy water. A faint cry reached Serena's ears, the cry of a child drowning with no one to see. And in that moment, Serena no longer saw a blonde little girl. She saw the child she never had, the baby killed in her womb by Derek's kicks. She saw herself at 23 lying in a pool of blood on the floor, alone, with no one to save her and no one who cared. She saw all the abandoned children in the foster system, children who grew up unloved, children like her. Damn it, Serena cursed, her voice catching. She did not remember making the decision. One moment she was standing on the bank, the next her shoes were flying off her feet and she was running toward the water's edge. Shadow barked wildly behind her. But Serena had already jumped, the cold of the canal striking her like a slap from fate. The freezing current wrapped around Serena like the hand of death, trying to drag her straight to the bottom. She had forgotten how violent this canal was, had forgotten how weakened her body had become after nearly 2 years of hunger on the streets. The torrent slammed into her face, water flooding her mouth, her nose, her lungs. But Serena refused to sink. She kicked wildly, her arms slicing through the water, forcing her head to stay above the surface as her eyes searched for the white dress. There, a pale blur spinning in the current about 20 meters away, near the concrete pillar of the overpass. Serena swam toward it, each kick tearing through muscles already exhausted. She had learned to swim during brief stays in foster homes with pools, one of the few skills from her past that could truly save a life. The current smashed her into the concrete pillar, her shoulder striking its sharp edge and pain flaring bright and hot. But she did not stop. 15 meters, 10 meters. The girl had stopped struggling, her small body floating face down, the white dress billowing like a withered petal. No, 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 Serena screamed inside, pouring every remaining ounce of strength into swimming faster. 5 meters, 3 meters. Her fingers brushed the fabric, slipped on the slick surface, grabbed again, and this time held. Serena wrapped one arm around the girl's chest and rolled her face up out of the water. The child's face was pale blue, her lips purple, her eyes closed. She was not breathing. Panic surged through Serena, but she forced it down. She had no right to panic now. She kicked toward the bank, one arm holding the girl tight, the other clawing at the water. The current fought her like it wanted to steal its prey back, waves pulling them under and releasing them again. Serena's lungs burned, her vision darkened from lack of oxygen. 20 meters to the bank, 15 meters, 10 meters. She did not know how much strength she had left, but she was not allowed to give up. Her fingers finally found a crack in the concrete edge. She clung to it and dragged them both out inch by inch. Serena rolled onto the bank, pulling the girl with her, collapsing into the mud behind tall reeds that hid them from the road. There was no time to breathe. She turned the girl onto her back, tilted her head, opened her mouth to check for anything blocking the airway. Her shaking hand pressed on the girl's chest and began compressions. She had seen people do resuscitation on television at the homeless shelter, but doing it herself was something else entirely, far more terrifying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Serena counted in her mind, pressing down and then breathing into the girl's mouth. No response. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe. Still nothing. Tears slid down Serena's cheeks, mixing with the river water on her face. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Please do not die. Do not die like my child. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The girl suddenly coughed, water spilling from her mouth and nose, her small body shuddering and then beginning to cry. The weak, broken cry was the most beautiful sound Serena had ever heard. The girl was alive. She had saved her. Serena dropped into the mud, clutching the child to her chest as if holding the lost piece of her own soul. You saved me, the girl whispered between sobs, her summer blue eyes opening to look at Serena. You have very sad eyes. Serena did not have time to answer before another sound cut through the moment. The roar of engines. Not 1 or 2 cars, but a whole convoy. The growl of speeding sport utility vehicles drew closer, louder, heavier, more threatening. Serena's blood turned cold as she realized the sound was coming straight toward her. Through the reeds, Serena saw them like a nightmare made real in broad daylight. Dozens of glossy black sport utility vehicles surged down the slope toward the canal, tires grinding the dirt into clouds of dust. They stopped less than 50 meters from her, doors flying open in unison as men poured out like black ants from a nest. They wore tailored black suits, guns in their hands, faces cold as stone. Serena tightened her hold on the child, her heart beating wildly. She knew at once they were not police. Police did not drive million-dollar vehicles. Police did not carry pistols with silencers. Police did not look like men ready to kill without hesitation. This was the Mafia, the underworld, the kind of people even Derek had feared when he was still a small-time criminal, and they were looking for someone. The largest black vehicle stopped closest to the water, its rear door opening as a man stepped out. Even from this distance, Serena could feel the power radiating from him like a dark halo. He was built like a mountain, broad-shouldered, heavy with muscle beneath a perfect black suit. A faint scar ran from his temple to his jaw, not making him ugly but only more dangerous. But most frightening were his eyes, steel gray, sweeping the area like a predator searching for prey. "Sophia!" he roared, his voice thunder carrying pure pain. "Sophia, my daughter." The girl in Serena's arms startled, her blue eyes flying open. "Daddy," she whispered weakly. "Daddy." The man heard. He snapped his head toward the reeds where Serena hid, then lunged forward, crossing the mud like a panther, his men racing after him with guns raised. Serena froze, unable to move. He burst through the reeds, dropped to his knees beside her and tore the girl from her arms. The way he crushed the child to his chest, holding her with a tenderness so utterly opposite to his fierce appearance, made Serena understand at once. This was her father, and this was the most powerful man she had ever seen. My daughter," he whispered into the girl's hair, his voice trembling. I thought I lost you. A lady saved me," Sophia said between sobs, her tiny finger pointing at Serena. "She jumped into the water to save me. She has very sad eyes, Daddy." The man's gray eyes lifted to Serena for the first time. She did not know what he saw in her. A thin woman soaked in mud and water, hair matted, clothes torn, a burn scar exposed on her arm, a weak prey not worth noticing or a threat that had to be eliminated. He did not speak to her. He turned to the man beside him, who looked like his right hand, and gave orders in a voice cold as ice. "Find out who is behind this, who let my daughter fall into the water, and find this woman. I want to know who she is and what she has to do with this. Search the entire area, leave no trace unchecked. I want answers within 24 hours. The words struck Serena like lightning. Find this woman. I want to know who she is, what she has to do with this. Not thanks, not gratitude. He thought she was involved in his daughter falling into the water. He thought she had harmed the child. Every memory of her past screamed inside her. When powerful people are angry, the weak always pay the price. She had been blamed for too many things she never did to believe this would be different. They would not believe her. No one ever believed her. While all attention focused on the girl, Serena began to move backward, step by step, softly, invisibly, the way she had lived for nearly 2 years. Then she turned and ran. She ran as if demons were chasing her, because to her that was exactly what was happening. Victor Castellano had faced countless terrifying situations in his 37 years of life. He had been shot, stabbed, ambushed, and nearly killed more times than he could remember. He had looked straight into the eyes of death without flinching, and had buried 3 rival mafia families without losing a single night of sleep. But 2 hours before he found Sophia by the canal, Victor Castellano experienced real fear for the first time since his wife died 6 years earlier. Sophia had been kidnapped right outside her school in broad daylight, when her bodyguard was gunned down by 2 professional shooters. The Moretti gang, whom Victor believed had been completely wiped out after last year's war, still had remnants left, and they were hungry for revenge. They took his daughter to extort him, or worse, to torture him by hurting the most precious thing he had. Victor unleashed the full force of the Castellano family in a frantic search. More than 200 men turned the city upside down in less than an hour. When they found the kidnappers' hideout, Victor personally led the assault. He shot 5 men with his own hands, not because it was necessary, but because of the uncontrollable fury of a father. But when the smoke cleared, Sophia was not there. She had escaped in the chaos, slipping out the back door unseen. A 6-year-old child, alone, lost in an abandoned industrial district near the canal. Victor thought he had lost his daughter. He imagined finding Sophia's small body drifting somewhere, the way he had found other victims in the cruelest years of his life. The thought nearly broke him. The man the underworld called Viper, the one who never knew fear. Then someone reported seeing a blonde little girl near the canal. Victor rushed there like a madman, and what he saw burned itself into his memory forever. Sophia was alive, crying in the arms of a strange woman soaked in mud and water. "She saved me," Sophia told him. "She jumped into the water to save me." A complete stranger had leapt into the raging canal to save his daughter. A thin, ragged woman, clearly homeless, had risked her life for a child she did not know. In Victor's world, where loyalty had to be bought with money or blood, that act was almost impossible to believe. He wanted to thank her. He wanted to know who she was so he could repay her properly. He wanted to make sure that the woman who saved his daughter would never lack anything for the rest of her life. But she had run away before he could say a single word. "Find out who she is," Victor ordered Marco, his right hand. "I want to know everything about her." That was all he said. But Victor forgot that he had just lived through 2 hours of hell, that his voice was still trembling with unspent rage, that his eyes still carried the violence of killing 5 men. He forgot that in the underworld, orders from Viper's mouth always carried the meaning of death. Marco misunderstood. All of Victor's men misunderstood. They thought he wanted to find the woman to interrogate her, to determine whether she was involved in the kidnapping. And when the rumor spread outward, it was twisted once more. Castellano is hunting a woman. Alive or dead does not matter. Victor did not know that his order to search had become a death sentence. He did not know that the entire underworld was now hunting his daughter's savior as if she were a wanted criminal. He did not know that this misunderstanding was driving the woman with the sad eyes into 3 days of hell on the streets, running from the very people who should have protected her. And Victor Castellano, a man who had never regretted anything in his life, would soon have to face the greatest mistake he had ever made. Serena ran without stopping until her legs could no longer carry her body. She collapsed in a dark alley behind an abandoned market, her back against a damp brick wall, her chest heaving as if it would burst apart. Shadow found her nearly an hour later, the old dog limping along the familiar scent of his owner, whimpering as he licked her hand. She clutched Shadow tightly, tears streaming down her mud-stained cheeks. What had she done wrong? She had only saved a child. She had only done the one right thing in a life full of wrong choices. And now the most powerful mafia on the eastern coast of America was hunting her like an animal. That night, Serena did not sleep. She curled in the corner of the alley, holding Shadow for warmth, her eyes wide open in the darkness. Every small sound made her flinch. Every passing car tightened her chest. She was used to being hunted. Derek had taught her that for years. But this was different. This was not one drunk gambling man. This was an entire underworld empire with hundreds of men and endless resources. When dawn came, Serena knew she had to move. Staying in one place meant death. She needed a new hiding place. Maybe the abandoned warehouses in the south of the city where few people went. She pulled her hood low and began moving through narrow alleys, Shadow trailing behind her. She had not gone more than 2 blocks when she saw it. A paper posted on a utility pole with a sketch of her face. Not a photograph, but a portrait drawing, yet so accurate it made her feel sick. The sad eyes, the hollow cheeks, the burn scar on her arm. Someone had described her in detail, likely one of the men in black suits who had seen her by the canal. The words beneath were simple and terrifying. "Find this woman. Contact the Castellano family. Large reward." Serena trembled as she tore the paper down, but she knew it was pointless. She had seen at least a dozen more in the same short alley. They were everywhere, on brick walls, on trash bins, on the windows of closed shops. The whole city was looking for her. She had to get out immediately. Serena turned into a narrower passage, planning to cut through the old market toward an abandoned subway entrance. But after only a few steps, she froze. At the end of the alley, a familiar figure was waiting. Tall, thin, black hair, slick with sweat, and that vicious smile she saw in her nightmares every night. Derek. "Hello, my love," Derek Hayes said as he walked toward her, his voice sweet like honey laced with poison. "I have been looking for you for so long. You know I always find you." Serena's legs turned to stone, her body paralyzed by the fear that had lived in her bones for years. Shadow growled, baring his teeth at Derek. But the old dog no longer had the strength to protect anyone. Derek pulled a knife from his jacket. "I hear the Mafia is looking for you. Interesting. But you belong to me, Serena. No one gets to touch you but me." He lunged toward her. Serena screamed and turned to run, but Derek was faster. His hand caught her hair and yanked her back hard. The familiar pain tore at her scalp and she cried out. "No!" she screamed, clawing at his hand. "Let me go!" At that moment, engines roared at the mouth of the alley. A convoy of black sport utility vehicles rushed past, men inside scanning the surroundings. Castellano's convoy. Derek froze, recognizing the familiar insignia of the city's most powerful mafia family. He was not insane enough to challenge Castellano. "Damn it!" Derek cursed, releasing Serena and vanishing into the shadows like a rat. "This is not over, my love." Serena did not wait for the convoy to pass. She grabbed Shadow and ran the other way, hiding among a pile of cardboard boxes behind a closed grocery store. She had escaped Derek thanks to the very people hunting her. The bitter irony almost made her laugh, but tears came instead. She was trapped between 2 hells and did not know which one would devour her first. The second day was 100 times worse than the first. Serena could no longer remember the last time she had eaten anything. Perhaps it was the half loaf of bread the morning she saved the girl, and now her stomach was chewing on itself in waves of hunger. Her body shook constantly, partly from the cold, partly from exhaustion, and mostly from the fear that had soaked into every cell after 2 days of being hunted by the entire city. She no longer dared to go out during the day. The sketch of her face had spread into every corner, from the slums to the wealthy streets, from cheap bars to fine restaurants. Every pair of eyes was a potential enemy. Every passerby could be someone calling in a reward from the Castellano family. Serena found an abandoned building on the edge of the southern industrial zone, once a textile factory before it went bankrupt and was left to decay. She slipped through a hole in the barbed wire fence, carrying Shadow inside because the old dog was too weak to walk on his own. Inside the building was a maze of dark corridors, rusted machinery and shattered windows. The smell of mold and rat droppings made her gag, but at least here she could hide from searching eyes. Shadow collapsed onto the cold concrete floor, his breathing shallow and fast. His remaining eye looked at Serena with endless weariness, as if telling her he could not go on. Serena knelt beside her only friend and stroked his dirty silver-gray fur. "Hold on a little longer, Shadow," she whispered, her voice hoarse with thirst. "I will find a way, I promise." But she knew it was an empty promise. She had no way. She was trapped between two enemies, Derek lurking somewhere in the shadows waiting for a chance to take her, and the Castellano Empire with endless resources and reach across the city. No matter where she ran, one of those hells would find her. A soft crying sound came from a dark corner of the room and made Serena start. She strained her eyes and saw a small figure crouched behind a pile of torn cardboard boxes. A child, maybe 10 or 11 years old, so thin that shoulder bones stuck out like wings beneath an oversized shirt. The child looked at her with eyes full of fear and hunger, tears streaking down a dirty face. Serena recognized that look. She had seen it in the mirror for years. A child abandoned by the world, like she had been, like she still was. She searched her pockets and found the only thing left, a protein bar she had taken from a trash bin behind a gym the day before, something she meant to save for Shadow when the dog's hunger became unbearable. She looked at the bar, looked at Shadow breathing hard on the floor, then looked at the crying child in the dark corner. Every survival instinct in her screamed to keep the food. Shadow needed it. She needed it. They would die with nothing in their stomachs, but the child would die too, and the child was smaller, weaker, more alone. Serena stood, walked to the child and knelt at eye level. She held out the bar. "Eat," she said gently, trying to smile even though her lips were cracked from thirst. "You need it more than I do." The child hesitated for a second, then grabbed the bar and devoured it as if it were the last meal of a lifetime. Perhaps it truly was her last meal. Serena returned to Shadow, lay down beside the old dog and held him close for warmth. Her stomach screamed in pain, but strangely her heart felt a little lighter. Even at the bottom of despair, she could still do something good for someone. Even while the whole world hunted her, she had not yet lost the last piece of her humanity. On the morning of the third day, Serena woke with the feeling that something was wrong. Shadow lay motionless beside her, the old dog's body colder than usual. She placed her hand on his chest and almost screamed when she felt a heartbeat so faint it was nearly gone. "Shadow?" She shook him gently, her voice trembling. "Shadow, wake up. Please wake up." The dog opened his remaining eye and looked at her, the gaze cloudy and endlessly tired. He tried to lift his head and lick her hand but had no strength, his head falling back onto the concrete with a dull sound that broke her heart. 3 days without food, 2 days without enough water, and old age had drained what little life Shadow had left. The dog was dying, and Serena knew that if she did not do something in the next few hours, she would lose the only friend she had left in the world. She looked down at her hand where the wedding ring still rested on her finger, the only thing of value she had left. The thing she had kept all these years, not for memory but as a last escape ticket when everything became desperate. And now everything was more desperate than ever. Serena took the ring off and looked at it one last time. It had once been a symbol of hell, of years of beatings and humiliation, of a marriage that had turned her into a slave. But now it was the only thing that could save Shadow. Sell it, buy medicine and food for the dog, then think of something else. She would find another way later. She always did. Serena knew a pawn shop on the edge of the old district, where Big Tony would buy anything without asking where it came from. She had avoided that place for 3 years because Tony had ties to small-time criminals, but now she had no choice. She carried Shadow and laid him in the deepest hidden corner of the abandoned building and covered him with her only thin blanket. "Wait for me," she whispered into the dog's ear. "I will come back. I promise." Shadow looked at her with his cloudy eye, his tail trying to wag weakly as if to say he trusted her. He always trusted her. Serena pulled her hood low and went out, slipping through dark alleys to avoid searching eyes. It took her nearly an hour to reach the pawn shop, her legs shaking from hunger and fear. Before entering, she looked through the glass to check inside. Big Tony sat behind the counter, a heavy man with a face flushed from drink. No one else was there. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The smell of old smoke and sweat made her gag, but she swallowed it and walked to the counter. "I want to pawn this," she said, placing the wedding ring on the glass and trying to keep her voice steady. Tony looked at the ring, then at her. His eyes narrowed, sweeping over her from head to toe like he was assessing merchandise. Then his gaze stopped on her arm where the burn scar showed beneath her pulled-up sleeve. He glanced up at the wall behind him where a paper with her sketched face was neatly posted. Then he smiled, the smile of a man who had just hit the jackpot. Well, well, well. Tony stood, walked around the counter, and blocked her escape. "Do you know who you are?" he said. Serena froze, the blood in her veins turning to ice. She turned to run, but Tony grabbed her and slammed her against the glass counter with the strength of a man twice her weight. And that was when his first punch struck her ribs, waking old fractures that had never truly healed. Through the exploding pain, she heard the sound of shattering glass and saw a massive dark shadow stepping through the broken door just before her world went black. Serena woke with the feeling that she was drifting between two worlds, one of dense darkness swallowing her whole, the other of pale light pulling her back into reality. The scent of expensive leather and a trace of men's cologne slipped into her nose, utterly foreign to the stench of garbage and sewage she had known for nearly 2 years on the streets. "Where am I?" Her eyes flew open in panic. She was lying on the back seat of a car, the kind with soft leather seats and so much space she could stretch out her legs and still have room. Her head rested on a small pillow, and someone had covered her with a heavy black man's coat that still smelled faintly of sandalwood. Then she saw the man sitting across from her, Victor Castellano, steel-gray eyes fixed on her, a face carved of stone without expression. The faint scar running from his temple to his jaw looked even more frightening under the dim interior light. The most powerful mafia boss on the eastern coast of America, the man who had buried 3 rival families, was sitting less than a meter from her. Serena screamed and lunged for the door, her hand yanking the handle in desperation, but it was locked. She turned back to face Victor, her back pressed to the door, her whole body shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Please do not kill me," she whispered, her voice shattered like cracked glass. "I did not hurt the girl. I swear I did nothing. I only saved her. Please, please do not kill me." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dried blood on her lip from Big Tony's blow. She was ready for death, had accepted that this was the end of her miserable life, but instinct still forced her to beg. Even with 1 chance in a million, she had to try. Victor did not move, only watched her with something strange in his eyes that she could not read. Then he spoke, his voice deep like distant thunder, but without the threat she expected. "I did not come to kill you." Serena stopped breathing, not sure she had heard correctly. She had prepared for a bullet in the head, for a knife across her throat, for any form of torture the Mafia was known to use on enemies. She had not prepared for those words. "I have been looking for you for 3 days, Victor continued, his voice slow and clear as if explaining to a frightened child. "Not to harm you, but to thank you." "Thank you," Serena repeated the word, as if it were a foreign language. "You saved my daughter's life," Victor said, and for the first time Serena saw a crack in his steel mask. "Sophia told me. You jumped into the raging water to save her, a child you did not know. You almost died to save my daughter. I did not come to kill you. I came to repay you. And do not fear the man from the pawn shop. He has paid for what he did to you, and will never hurt anyone again." Serena looked at him, tears still falling. But now they were no longer tears of fear, but of profound confusion. She did not believe him. She could not believe him. Everything in her life had taught her that nothing was free, that powerful men were never kind without a purpose, that every time she trusted someone she paid with blood and tears. Derek had once spoken sweet words like honey before turning her life into hell. "What do you want from me?" she asked warily. "No one does anything without a reason. What do you want?" Victor studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes deep, as if trying to read her. Then he said, his voice softer, but still firm enough to leave no doubt, "For now, I only want you to eat properly, have your injuries treated, and rest somewhere safe. That is all. What happens after that is your choice." Serena did not answer. She did not trust him, could not trust anyone, but she no longer had the strength to resist either. She simply sat there, her back still against the door, her eyes still fixed on Victor as if he were a poisonous snake that might strike her at any moment. The Castellano estate appeared before Serena like a castle from a fairy tale, but instead of wonder she felt only dread. Tall, gray stone walls surrounded the vast grounds. Massive iron gates opened automatically as the convoy entered, and dozens of security cameras swept every corner like eyes that never slept. This was not a home. This was the fortress of an underworld empire. The car stopped at the main entrance, and Victor stepped out first, then turned back to open the door for her. Serena hesitated for a moment before stepping out, her legs trembling as they touched the cold marble ground. She felt pitifully small and shabby amid such grand luxury, her torn clothes soaked with sweat and muddy water, her hair matted, dried blood on her lip and cheek. A maid approached, bowed to Victor, and led Serena inside. She walked through a foyer as wide as a sports field, past expensive classical paintings on the walls, up a spiral marble staircase, and finally stopped before a room at the end of the hall. "This is your room," the maid said, opening the door. "If you need anything, press the button by the bed." Serena stepped in and froze. The room was larger than the apartment she once rented before Derek burned it down. A king-size bed with white sheets, a carved oak wardrobe, a dressing table with a large mirror, a private bathroom with a marble tub. The window looked out over a vast garden with a fountain and blooming rose bushes. This was not a cell. This was a luxury guest room. On the bed lay a set of new clothes, still with tags, her size as if someone had measured her precisely. On the table was a tray of hot food, the smell of roasted meat and fresh bread making her stomach twist with hunger. But Serena did not touch the food. She did not change her clothes. She did not sit on the soft bed. She only stood there, her back against the wall, her eyes sweeping the room for traps. "Does the door lock?" "Yes," from the inside. "Are there bars on the window?" "No, she could jump out if needed." "Is there a camera in the room?" She did not see one, but that did not mean there was none. Everything was too perfect to be real. There had to be a trap somewhere. There had to be a price. No one was kind to her without wanting something in return. Derek had once bought her pretty dresses and cooked romantic dinners, then beaten her until her ribs broke because she slightly burned the rice. The men who locked her in the basement had once fed her properly too, before forcing her to do things she never wanted to remember. A knock at the door made her jump. Marco, Victor's right hand, entered with a face that was cold but not hostile. "We retraced your steps from the pawn shop back to the abandoned factory," he said. "Your dog was found there and has been taken to a veterinarian. He is severely weakened and dehydrated, but he will recover. The boss ordered that he be treated at all costs." "Shadow," Serena breathed, her voice carrying something other than fear for the first time. "Where is my dog? He is being cared for. When he is stronger, he will be brought here to you," Marco replied, then turned to leave. "Wait," Serena whispered, gripping the sheet, her eyes wide with sudden urgency. "The child, inside that warehouse. There was a starving child hiding in the corner. I gave them my food." Marco paused, his hand on the door. He looked back at her, his expression softening just a fraction. "We found the child, Miss Blake. My men swept the entire building. The kid has been taken to a safe shelter and is being well fed. You saved 2 lives that day, not just one." He nodded once, then added, "You should eat something and rest. You look like you are about to collapse." The door closed, leaving Serena alone with the storm in her head. Shadow was alive. Shadow was being treated. Her only friend would not die. Tears overflowed without control, but Serena did not sob aloud. She had learned to cry in silence long ago, from nights when Derek beat her unconscious, from years in the dark basement where no one heard her screams. She looked at the tray of food, her stomach screaming in pain. She had not eaten for 3 days. Her body was breaking down, but if she ate, she would owe them. If she wore their clothes, she would owe them. If she slept in their bed, she would owe them. And in the Mafia's world, debts had to be paid. One way or another. Serena slid down to the floor, her back against the wall, her eyes fixed on the door. She would not sleep. She would not eat. She would wait for something terrible to happen, as it always had throughout the 27 years of her life. Serena did not know how long she had been sitting on the floor. Perhaps a few hours, or perhaps all night. She had lost any sense of time. Her eyes were starting to droop from exhaustion when the door suddenly flew open, and a small golden whirlwind burst in. Big Sister, Sofia Castellano, ran straight to where Serena was curled in the corner, her golden hair flying, her summer blue eyes bright with light. The child did not hesitate, did not feel afraid. She ran straight into the arms of the strange woman and hugged her tightly as if they had known each other all their lives. Serena froze, not knowing how to respond. She had prepared herself for every terrible thing that might happen in this mansion, but she had not prepared for the embrace of a 6-year-old child. "She is here, Daddy." Sophia turned back toward the door and called out. "I found her. She is the one who saved me." Victor appeared in the doorway but did not enter. He only stood there, leaning against the frame, his gray eyes watching the two of them with something Serena could not read. Sophia looked back at Serena, her crystal-clear eyes gazing straight into her soul. "You are the one who jumped into the water to save me, right?" she asked, her voice like a ringing bell. "I remember you. I remember your sad eyes. Why do you have sad eyes?" Serena could not answer, her throat tight as if someone were squeezing it shut. She was not used to this innocence, not used to being looked at with eyes that held no judgment or purpose. This child did not know who she was, did not know where she came from, did not know the terrible things that had happened to her. Sophia only knew she was the one who saved her, and for the child that was enough. "I almost drowned," Sophia said, her voice trembling as she remembered. "The water was very cold, and I could not breathe. I was so scared. I called Daddy, but he could not hear me. Then I saw you. You swam to me and saved me. You pulled me out of the water. I thought I was dead, but you saved me. You are my angel." Angel. Serena almost smiled at the irony of the word. She was everything except an angel. She was abandoned, sold, burned, hunted like an animal. She was the trash the world had thrown away, a ghost on the streets no one cared to see. She was not an angel. She was only a woman too tired to fear death anymore. But Sophia did not know that. Sophia only knew how to hold her tight, the small, warm embrace of a child who still believed in miracles and happy endings. "You are so thin," Sophia said, her tiny fingers touching the ribs beneath Serena's shirt. "Do you eat? Daddy says people who do not eat become very weak. You have to eat a lot here. There is so much good food. The chef makes very good chocolate cake. I will ask him to give you one." Each innocent word slipped like water through the stone wall Serena had built around her heart for years. She had not cried when Derek beat her. She had not cried when she was sold like an object. She had not cried when the apartment burned and the fire ate into her flesh. She had learned to swallow her tears, to turn herself into stone so no one could hurt her anymore. But now, in the arms of a 6-year-old child who did not know fear, Serena began to cry. Not the silent tears she was used to, but the broken sobs of someone who had held too much inside for too long. She cried from pain, from exhaustion, from despair. But more than anything, she cried because for the first time in many years someone was holding her without wanting anything from her. "Do not cry." Sophia panicked and wiped Serena's tears with her tiny hand. "I am sorry. Did I hurt you?" "Daddy, why is she crying?" Victor still stood in the doorway, his gray eyes watching the scene with something like pain in them. He had seen many people cry in his life, most of them begging for mercy, but he had never seen anyone cry like this woman, as if she were pouring out a lifetime of buried pain. He did not step into the room. He knew his presence would only frighten her more, so he stayed there, in the hallway shadows, watching his daughter hold the woman with the saddest eyes he had ever seen. After Sophia left with a promise to bring her chocolate cake in the morning, Serena finally surrendered to the hunger gnawing at her stomach. She ate the now cold tray of food on the table, bathed for the first time in days, and changed into the soft clothes someone had prepared for her. She still did not trust this place, but her body was too exhausted to fight anymore. She lay down on the bed, the mattress like a cloud cradling her thin, scarred body. She thought she would not sleep, but the exhaustion of 3 days of running pulled her into darkness before she knew it, and that darkness did not greet her with gentle dreams. Derek stood before her, his vicious smile on his lips, a knife dripping blood in his hand. "I found you, my love," he said in a voice sweet like the apologies he used after breaking her bones. "You cannot run from me. You are mine, forever mine." The room burst into flames, fire licking the walls, the bed, her skin. Serena screamed as the fire swallowed her arm, the stench of burning flesh filling her nose, the pain tearing through every sense. She tried to run, but her legs would not move. She tried to call for help, but no one heard. She was trapped in a dark basement with shadows closing in, hands grabbing her, laughter echoing everywhere. Serena bolted upright with a scream that tore through the night, drenched in sweat, her heart hammering as if it would break her chest. She did not know where she was, did not remember who she was, only that panic was choking her and she could not breathe. It took minutes to realize she was in the unfamiliar room in the Castellano mansion, not in the hellish basement, not in the burning apartment. Derek was not here. The fire was not here. She was safe, but she did not feel safe. She never felt safe. A soft knock made her jump, her back pressed to the headboard, her hands gripping the blanket like a weapon. "Are you all right?" Victor's voice came through the closed door, deep and slow. "I heard you scream." Serena did not answer, her throat still tight with fear. She waited for the door to burst open, waited for him to come in, waited for the terrible thing she had expected from the start. But the door did not open. Victor did not enter. Instead, she heard a rustle like someone sitting down in the hallway. "I will not come in." Victor's voice came again, closer now, right outside the door. "I am just sitting here. Take your time. No one can hurt you here." Silence stretched. Serena sat on the bed hugging a pillow, her eyes fixed on the door. She could hear Victor's steady breathing outside, knew he was truly sitting there, not leaving. "Sophia has nightmares too," Victor said suddenly, his voice lower, softer. "After her mother died, she cried every night for a whole year. I did not know what to do, except sit outside her door, just like I am sitting here now. Sometimes people do not need someone to fix their problems. They just need to know someone is nearby." Serena still did not speak, but she felt her breathing begin to slow, her heart no longer racing so wildly. He was there, just outside the door, but he was not forcing his way in. He was not pushing. He was simply there, letting her decide if she needed him. "My wife died giving birth to Sophia," Victor continued, as if speaking more to himself than to her. "I thought I would not survive that day. But then I looked into my daughter's eyes and I knew I had to go on. For her. I am not good at talking about feelings, but I want you to know that whatever you have been through, you are safe here. No one is allowed to touch you without your consent. That is my order." Serena hugged the pillow tighter, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. She still did not fully believe him, could not fully believe after everything that had happened. But in a small corner of her hardened heart, a fragile seed of trust began to grow, thin as a thread yet real. She sat there through the night, and Victor sat outside through the night, two strangers separated by a wooden door, yet connected by something neither of them could yet name. The next morning, Victor called the family's private doctor to examine Serena. She protested at first, her instinct for self-defense making her unwilling to let anyone touch her body. But Victor promised the doctor was a woman, and that he would wait outside. In the end, she agreed, partly because the injuries from Big Tony still ached, and partly because Victor had sat outside her door until morning, and that made her feel she owed him something. Dr. Elena Rossi was a middle-aged woman with silver hair and gentle eyes. She examined Serena in silence, but the longer she examined her, the more her face twisted with pain, as if she herself were feeling those injuries. When she finished, she left the room carrying a thick file, her eyes red as if she had been crying. Victor was waiting in his office when Dr. Rossi entered. He saw her face and knew immediately something was wrong. "Report," he ordered, his voice as cold as usual but his eyes already darkening. Dr. Rossi placed the file on the desk, her hands trembling slightly. "She has been through hell, Mr. Castellano," she said, her voice breaking. "I have practiced medicine for 3 decades, and I have never seen so many injuries on one body. 3 ribs were once broken and never treated properly. They healed but out of alignment. The left collarbone was once cracked, a 3rd-degree burn on her left arm, leaving permanent scarring. Countless old scars on her back and thighs, consistent with repeated beatings over a long period. Signs of prolonged, severe malnutrition, and worse, signs of past sexual assault." Victor did not speak, but his hand clenched into a fist on the desk, his knuckles whitening. "Do you know who did this to her?" he asked, his voice so low it was almost a growl. "She did not say," Dr. Rossi shook her head. "But from what I see, this was not the work of one person. It appears she was abused for many years by different people at different stages of her life." After Dr. Rossi left, Victor called Marco in. "Find out everything about her past," he ordered, his gray eyes burning with a fire Marco had not seen in many years. "I want to know who she is, where she came from, and who did this to her. Miss nothing." Marco nodded and disappeared. Less than 6 hours later, he returned with a file even thicker than Dr. Rossi's. Victor read page after page, and with each one his anger rose another degree. Serena Blake, 27 years old, orphaned young, raised in the foster care system, with records of repeated abuse by foster families. Married at 18 to Derek Hayes, a man with a history of domestic violence and gambling. Hospital reports of multiple admissions with injuries inconsistent with claims of falling downstairs. Once pregnant but miscarried after a severe assault. Missing for 2 years, found in a raid on a human trafficking ring with 13 other women. Derek Hayes released for lack of evidence, and witnesses withdrawing statements. Serena's apartment set on fire 1 year later. Suspect Derek Hayes, but insufficient evidence to prosecute. From then on, Serena Blake became homeless, without identification, without a fixed address, living like a ghost on the streets for over a year. Victor finished reading and sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood, and what happened next made Marco flinch despite having served him for over 2 decades. Victor swept his arm across the desk, sending everything flying. Lamp, computer, coffee cup, all crashing to the floor in pieces. He overturned the chair and punched the wall so hard the painting beside it shook and fell. He roared with pure fury, the sound of a beast confronted with something unbearable. "Derek Hayes," Victor breathed, his gray eyes burning like live coals. "Find him, Marco. Find him for me. Tear this city apart if you must. I want him alive when you bring him to me. I want to look into his eyes before I show him what real hell is." Marco nodded and left immediately. He knew when Victor Castellano was angry the world should tremble. And this was the first time in many years he had seen his boss enraged over a woman who was not his wife or his daughter. The days that followed passed like a dream Serena did not dare believe was real. Victor offered her a position as Sophia's tutor to teach the child reading, writing, and the basic knowledge she would need before starting school. It was paid work, it had purpose, and most importantly it gave Serena a reason to stay without feeling she was living on pity. She agreed, though she still did not fully trust anything in that house. Shadow was brought back after a week of treatment. The old dog much healthier now with his fur washed clean and his belly no longer hollow with hunger. When he saw Serena, he rushed to lick her, as if afraid she would disappear if he did not. Serena held her only friend tightly and cried, but this time they were tears of happiness. Each morning, Serena taught Sophia in the mansion library, a vast room with shelves reaching the ceiling and natural light pouring through tall windows. Sophia was bright and eager to learn, but what surprised Serena most was how the child was never afraid of her, never looked at her with pity or curiosity about the scars on her body. Sophia only looked at her as a friend, someone she trusted completely from the moment she had been saved from the water. Victor often appeared at lunchtime, sitting with the two of them in the grand dining room, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. He did not speak much, only listened to Sophia talk about what she had learned that day, occasionally glancing at Serena with an expression she could not read. Once, as Serena was clearing the table, her hand brushed Victor's when they both reached for a plate. She pulled back as if shocked, her heart racing, but Victor only looked at her and smiled softly, the first smile she had ever seen on his usually icy face. Moments like that accumulated slowly, building something Serena did not dare name. One night, about 2 weeks after she arrived at the mansion, Serena could not sleep and went downstairs for water. She saw light spilling from Victor's study and hesitated before approaching the door. He was sitting alone in the dark with only a small desk lamp on, holding a photograph she guessed was of his late wife. Victor looked up when he heard her steps, but he did not seem annoyed. "Cannot sleep?" he asked, his voice low and tired. Serena nodded and started to turn away, but Victor gestured for her to sit in the chair across from him. She hesitated, then sat, keeping a careful distance as if ready to flee at any moment. They sat in silence for a long time, a silence that was not awkward but strangely comforting. Then Victor began to speak, about his wife, about the day she died giving birth to Sophia, about the pain he thought he would never survive. He told her about the nights he sat alone in this room looking at the photograph and wondering why he was still alive when she was gone. Serena listened, and for the first time she saw the man behind the cold viper mask. He was not a monster. He was only a man who had lost the love of his life and was trying to go on for his daughter. Then, without knowing when it started, Serena began to speak too, about Derek, about the beatings, about the child she lost, about the years in the dark basement she never wanted to remember. She spoke with tears streaming down, spoke of things she had never told anyone, spoke as if she would suffocate if she did not let them out. Victor listened without interrupting, without judging, without showing the pity she hated. He only sat there, his gray eyes holding something like the understanding of a man who had also been crushed by life. When she finished, he stood and did something she did not expect. He took off his coat and gently draped it over her shoulders, not hugging her, not touching her more than necessary, just enough to let her know he was there and he was not going anywhere. "You have been very strong," Victor said, his voice rough. "To survive all of that and still keep a heart kind enough to jump into a river to save a stranger's child. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever met." Serena looked at him, and in that moment she felt something shift inside her. She was still afraid, still not fully trusting. But beside that fear, now there was something else. Something warm, fragile, and frightening in an entirely different way. Derek Hayes never gave up once he had set his sights on something, especially when that something was Serena. He had followed her for 3 years, tracing every smallest lead, waiting for the perfect moment to seize the prey who had dared to escape him. That night in the alley, When he almost caught her before the Castellano convoy passed, Derek saw what he needed: the black sport utility vehicles with Castellano insignia, the men in suits searching for someone, and the panic in Serena's eyes when she saw them. He was not stupid. He knew something was happening between his former wife and the most powerful Mafia family in the city. And when rumors spread that Castellano was hunting a homeless woman and then suddenly stopped, Derek knew exactly what had happened. Serena was inside the Castellano mansion. His prey was living in the lair of one of the most dangerous men he had ever heard of. Anyone with a shred of reason would have given up at that point, but Derek Hayes had no reason. He had obsession. Serena was his, had always been his, and would always be his until one of them died. He could not accept that she was living under another man's roof, protected by someone 1,000,000 times more powerful than he was. The thought burned him from the inside like acid. Derek began asking around in the small-time criminal world, people he knew from his days of gambling and debt. He learned about the Moretti family, once Castellano's greatest rivals before they were defeated in last year's territorial war. Most of them were dead or gone, but some remnants still hid in the shadows, nursing their hatred and waiting for revenge. Derek found a way to contact Luca Moretti, the brother of the former Moretti boss who had been killed by Victor Castellano. The meeting took place in an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city, where the smell of rust and dead rats made Derek want to vomit, but he swallowed it and went in. Luca was a thin man with the wild eyes of someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. "What do you want?" Luca asked, his voice sharp as a blade. "I want into the Castellano mansion," Derek said, forcing calm into his voice though his heart was pounding. "I know their schedule, and I found a weak link," Derek said, his eyes gleaming with cunning. "They hired a new gardener last month who owes big gambling debts. I bought his debt in exchange for him leaving the service gate unlocked. I know exactly how to get in. In return, I only want one thing." Luca narrowed his eyes at him suspiciously. "What thing?" "The woman inside," Derek said, his vicious smile spreading. "She is my former wife. I want to take her home." Luca was silent for a moment, weighing the offer. He did not care about Serena or Derek or anyone else except his revenge on Victor Castellano. If this man could help him enter the fortress where his enemy lived, he would trade anything. "Fine," Luca nodded. "But if you lie to me, I will kill you before Castellano even gets the chance." They began to plan, Derek providing information he had gathered from following Serena and watching the convoys, and Luca preparing men and weapons. The attack was set for the weekend, when Victor had meetings across the city, and only half the guards would be home. Derek did not know that Victor was also hunting him. He did not know that the entire Castellano empire was turning over every stone to find the man who had abused Serena for years. He thought he was the hunter, but in truth he was also prey, and the prey was walking straight into the trap laid by the very people who wanted to tear him apart. On Saturday afternoon, the sky was heavy and gray like an omen of an approaching storm. Victor left the estate for an important meeting with partners across the city. He kissed Sophia's forehead and told Serena he would be back before dinner. Marco went with him, leaving only half the usual number of guards at the mansion. No one knew this was the moment the enemy had been waiting for. Serena was reading a story to Sophia in the child's room when the first gunshot rang out from the direction of the front gate. She flinched, the survival instinct sharpened by years of fear, igniting instantly inside her. Something was wrong. More shots followed, then screams, then glass shattering, then the pounding of running feet in the hall. Serena grabbed Sophia's hand and pulled her into the corner of the room behind the large wardrobe. "You must be quiet," she whispered into the child's ear, her voice shaking but controlled. "No matter what happens, you must not make a sound. Do you understand?" Sophia nodded, her blue eyes wide with fear, but she did not cry or scream. She trusted Serena, the woman who had saved her from the deadly water. The door was kicked open. Serena saw 3 figures rush in, dressed in black with guns, and behind them the face she saw in her nightmares every night. Derek Hayes stepped into the room with his familiar vicious smile, the knife in his hand glinting under the light. "Hello, my love," he said in the sweet voice he used when apologizing after breaking her bones. "I told you, you cannot run from me." Serena's blood turned to ice, her body frozen by the fear carved into her bones over many years. She wanted to shrink back, to beg, to do anything so he would not hurt her again. But then she felt Sophia's small hand clutching her clothes and something inside her shifted. She was no longer the Serena of 9 years ago, the naive 18-year-old who believed a violent man's promises. She was no longer the helpless victim who only endured and begged. She was the woman who had jumped into a raging river to save a stranger's child, who had survived hell and was still standing. And she would not let Derek touch Sophia, even if it killed her. Serena pushed Sophia behind her and stood up straight to face Derek, even though her legs were trembling and her heart was pounding as if it would burst. "Leave here," she said, her voice shaking but unyielding. "Do whatever you want to me, but do not touch the child." Derek laughed loudly, a mad sound filling the room. "Oh, you have become brave now." He stepped closer, the knife lifting to brush her cheek. "I like that. The more you resist, the more fun it is." He glanced at Sophia hiding behind Serena, his eyes lighting with something cruel. "And this little one, Castellano's daughter, right? She must be very valuable. Luca will like this gift." Serena did not think. She acted. She grabbed the nearest table lamp and smashed it into Derek's face, glass exploding and blood spraying from his forehead. "Run, Sophia," she screamed. "Run and hide. Find someone to help you." Sophia ran toward the door, but one of Derek's men blocked her. Serena lunged, clawing, biting, kicking, doing anything to keep them away from the child. She was not a fighter. She had no weapon, no strength, but she had something they did not: the desperation of someone protecting what she loved. "You bitch!" Derek roared, blood streaming down his face. He grabbed Serena's hair and yanked hard, smashing her head into the wall. Stars burst before her eyes, but she still struggled. He punched her face, her stomach, her old wounds that had never healed. She fell to the floor and he kicked her ribs once, twice, 3 times until she heard the familiar sound of bone breaking. But even on the floor, with blood covering her face, Serena crawled toward Sophia, using her body as a shield between the child and the attackers. "Do not touch her," she whispered, her voice shattered with pain. "Kill me. Do anything to me, but do not touch her." Derek stopped and looked down at his former wife, lying broken and bleeding at his feet, and smiled. He crouched, grabbed her chin, and forced her to look into his eyes. "You think you have the right to command me," he whispered, his hot, foul breath on her face. "You still do not understand. You are mine, forever mine, and I will teach you this lesson again, slowly, very slowly, until you never forget." Victor received the alert from the security system while he was in the middle of his meeting. He did not need to hear the full sentence. The words "the estate is under attack" were enough to make him bolt from the room like a panther. Marco drove at a reckless speed through the city, but to Victor every second felt like a year. Sophia, Serena, the 2 names circled his mind like a curse. If anything happened to them, he would burn this city to the ground. The Castellano convoy reached the estate only 15 minutes after the call, but 15 minutes were more than enough to turn it into a battlefield. The bodies of guards lay scattered across the front yard, the intruders were sweeping through the grounds, and screams echoed from the upper floor where Sophia's room was. Victor said nothing. He drew his gun and began to shoot. Every bullet was a life, every step another enemy falling. He moved through the mansion like death harvesting souls, gray eyes blazing with a hellish fire no one could extinguish. Marco and the others followed, eliminating anyone still standing. Luca Moretti tried to flee through the back exit, but Victor caught him in the corridor. A bullet to the knee dropped him, and Victor stood over him with the gun to his forehead. "You dared touch my family," Victor said, his voice cold as ice yet burning with a rage that could scorch the world. "This is your last mistake." The shot rang out and Luca Moretti ceased to exist. Victor rushed upstairs, kicked open Sophia's door, and the sight before him crushed his heart. Serena lay on the floor, blood covering her face, her body so bruised she was barely recognizable. Yet she was still shielding Sophia, who sobbed behind her. And standing over her was a man with a knife, his face twisted with fury. Derek Hayes turned at the sound of the door and froze when he saw Victor Castellano in the doorway. The Mafia lord looked like a demon straight from hell, his black suit stained with blood, smoke still curling from his gun, and gray eyes holding something more terrifying than death. "Drop the knife," Victor said, each word a roll of thunder. Derek trembled and let the knife fall, his knees buckling not from choice but because his body could not stand under that gaze. "Spare me," he stammered, all bravado gone. "I only wanted my wife back. She is my wife." Victor knelt by Serena, gently lifting her. Sophia ran into his arms, sobbing into her father's chest. "She saved me," Sophia cried. "They tried to take me, but she would not let them." "They hit her, Daddy. They hit her a lot." Victor held his daughter tight, then looked down at Serena in his arms. She tried to open her eyes, her swollen lips moving as if to speak. "Sophia," she whispered weakly. "Is Sophia all right?" "She is safe," Victor said softly. "Because of you. You saved my daughter again." He stood, laid Serena down gently, and turned to face Derek kneeling on the floor, his hand clenched on the gun. Every cell in his body screaming to kill the man who had tormented Serena for years, who had invaded his home and threatened his child. "Victor," Serena's weak voice reached him. He turned and saw her trying to sit up, though every movement clearly hurt her. "Do not kill him," she said, her voice rough but firm. Victor frowned. "He has done this to you. He deserves to die." "I know," Serena said, looking at Derek, and for the first time in her life seeing him without fear. "He took everything from me. My youth, my child, my peace. But I do not want him to take anything else. I do not want him to turn me into a killer. I do not want Sophia to see someone die because of me. Give him to the police. With the evidence of his crimes, he will never be free again. He will spend the rest of his life in prison knowing that I escaped him, that I have a new life, that I won. That is a punishment worse than death." Victor looked at Serena for a long moment, then nodded. He signaled Marco to take Derek away, along with the thick file of evidence the investigators had gathered, enough to ensure he would never see the sun outside bars again. Derek was dragged away screaming and cursing, but no one listened. He had become the past. The last dark chapter finally closed. Victor returned to Serena and lifted her gently, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "The doctor is coming," he whispered into her hair. "You will be all right. I am here. I will never let anyone hurt you again. Never." Serena closed her eyes, and for the first time in many years she truly believed a man's promise. Serena took nearly 2 months to fully recover from the injuries Derek had inflicted on her. 3 broken ribs, a fractured cheekbone, and countless bruises across her body. But this time she did not have to heal alone. Victor was with her every day. He brought meals to her room. He read to her when she could not sleep. He sat beside her bed through the nights when the nightmares returned. Sophia visited every afternoon, bringing drawings she had made herself, and stories about the school she would soon start. Shadow curled up at the foot of her bed, as if he understood his owner needed his presence. And for the first time in her 27 years, Serena was healing not only in body but in soul. 3 months after the attack, when she could walk normally again and her smile began to appear more often, Victor invited her to walk with him in the garden of the estate. The full moon hung low in the sky, casting silver light over the blooming roses and the murmuring fountain. They walked in silence for a while before Victor stopped and turned to her and said, in a voice low and awkward in a way she had never heard from the most powerful Mafia lord on the East Coast, that he was not good at these things, that he knew his life was dangerous and dark, that he did not deserve someone like her who had suffered so much and deserved peace, but that he could no longer keep this inside him, and that he loved her, and did not know when it had happened, perhaps from the moment he saw her by the river holding his daughter, or from the night he sat outside her door listening to her tell her past, and that he wanted her to stay not because of Sophia and not because of a debt of gratitude but because he could no longer imagine life without her in it. Serena looked at the man the world called Viper and feared, but who to her was the one who had saved her from darkness and given her a home and taught her that not all men were monsters. She said, with tears on her cheeks, that she had been running all her life and did not want to run anymore. Their first kiss happened under the moonlight, gentle and careful, like 2 broken hearts learning how to love again. A year later, Serena stood before the mirror in a simple, elegant white wedding dress, no longer the thin, ragged woman Victor had found in a pawnshop years before, but healthy and confident, and most of all happy. Sophia was the flower girl in a pink dress holding a small bouquet, and cried out that she had a mother now when the ceremony ended and Victor kissed his bride. The wedding took place in the back garden of the estate, with only their closest loved ones present. Marco was best man. Shadow wore a red bow by the altar, and for the first time Serena had a family that truly belonged to her. 5 years later, Serena sat on the garden swing watching 11-year-old Sophia play chase with her 3-year-old brother Gabriel, who had his father's gray eyes and his mother's warm smile. Shadow, older now, still followed the children, wagging his tail. Victor returned from work, still in his black suit, but his eyes no longer cold, and when he saw his family they lit up with pure love, and Sophia and Gabriel ran to hug him. Serena stood and kissed her husband and rested her head on his shoulder, and thought of the trembling girl in the pawnshop 5 years ago who waited for death and did not dare believe in anything good, and who would never have believed life could be like this. To be loved, to be protected, to belong to a place called home. From a homeless woman abandoned by the world to the lady of the Castellano Empire. From victim to survivor. From alone to loved. Serena's journey was proof that no matter how cruel life is, there is always a chance for a happy ending if we are brave enough to reach for it. This story offers a deep lesson about the power of kindness and faith, because Serena risked her life to save a stranger's child without expecting anything in return, and that selfless act changed her entire life. Sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest light, and those we think are monsters can become saving angels. Never lose faith in people and in yourself, because miracles can happen to anyone, even those who once believed they did not deserve happiness. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss future videos. Remember to like and share this video with those you love. We would love to hear how you feel about Serena and Victor's story, and whether you have ever passed through darkness and found light at the end of the tunnel. Leave a comment below to share what is in your heart, because we listen and value every word. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the story. We wish you and your family health, joy, and love every day. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.